topic number 5 says, I, the person who posted this, I agree and disagree with this. This is in reference to African American culture. So this takes us to TikTok. Two and a half or 2 3/4 of a minute. Let's watch it. Let's discuss it.
They have no culture. African Americans in this country are the only groups. They have no culture. It depends on who you meet, where you meet them.
But currently, there's not an African American culture.
No.
Yes, there is.
What is it? Name 2 value systems in the African American culture.
Value system?
Yes. Name 2 taboos in the African American culture system. Name 2 traditions, by the way, in the African American culture system. There is no value for freedom if you don't understand what it is. The concept of free. You have to have a foundation on which it would balance when you ask for it. Civil rights, they give it to you. You have no culture. Nancy, you've been here, born here. Why would you be surprised if I say African Americans don't have a culture?
Okay, I don't know what happened there. Give me 1 second. I'm having trouble playing this video. Give me 1 second. Let me see if I could fix this behind the scene. But in the chat,
I'm kind of glad it kind of broke for you, though. Real talk. I'm kind of glad it broke. I couldn't stand to use that nigga no more. Good God.
So Cheryl says, jumping the broom is a part of African American culture. RBG, I think, said hip hop. Man, this thing is not playing. But basically, because I've seen the video, and I think a few of you in the chat referenced it. He's basically saying African Americans have a culture. What are the norms? What are the taboos? And she's Haitian American. The interview was Haitian American. So to be quite fair, she might not have been the best person to ask. But those were the types of things he would have asked her later on in that video. What are your taboos? What are your norms? And she tried to, she said hip hop, but she didn't really stand on it. And he kind of got on her about, I can't believe that video stopped working like that. But in any event, we'll push on. So those are some of the things that would have come up in that conversation. I will say this, though. You might not like him. And one of the things you probably don't like about him, some of these older African men, and when I say African men, I'm not talking continental. I'm talking just black men, period. Some older black men speak in a very simplistic way that doesn't expound on the thought very well. And that can be problematic. There was a professor at the college that I went to. I wasn't in his class, but someone who I was friends with was in his class. And he made a statement like, Bahamians have no culture. And that shit really bothered me. And I let him know that I heard about that shit and it bothered me. And he kind of retracted it, but I'm very careful about telling the people they don't have a culture. What this guy Frank might be saying is you might not have a unified culture in America. And I'll use the example of W.E.B. Du Bois. I think it was John Henry Clark who mentioned it, but it was mentioned that when he did his dissertation for his PhD, his thesis was on the Philadelphia Negro. And I know Cheryl will be familiar with the Philadelphia Negro, but his thesis was on the Philadelphia Negro. And the idea was that the Philadelphia Negro, so to speak, was so different from other Negroes at the time that it was dissertation worthy. So I don't know if this gentleman, Frank, if that's what he's kind of getting to, that because, down south is one thing, out west is another thing, the East Coast is another thing. Maybe that's what he's getting at. Like, what's the cultural thing that binds everyone? And just to mention, hip hop was created just over 50 years ago. So it's kind of hard to say, well, hip hop is the culture, and different groups of people participated in that creation. So I will try to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's speaking in that old man, Caribbean old man, African, maybe old man American thing, but he's simplifying it just a bit too much, and you should never really tell people they don't have a culture. So with that said, I just try to set the table there. We still have a few of you with us. I'm going to start with Real Black Gentleman on this one. Real Black Gentleman, what say you to what the brother Frank was talking about?
Well, I wish he didn't get cut off, because I mean, just to say that, he was just trying to with the gotcha, trying to say something that might have a meaningful response, but try to forward retreat to other points without getting the main point. It's like, I'm an African American. I think it's very insulting for him to say that African Americans don't have culture. Just full stop. There's no way you can sit here and say that. Jazz music is there's so much. It goes without saying. I don't know if he thinks that culture is a will to power, like Marimba and E would say. He said that would be the Asili. That, what I'm saying, because our Asili is not the same as the Asili that is the dominant one, that it basically does not exist. I think he might be getting his terms mixed up. But to say that we have no culture, but I don't think he got them mixed up, because he made the whole point of saying that, name taboos and, things that, even though he's saying it from, I guess, the other person wasn't American. It's like, I wouldn't say the same thing to a Jamaican or to a Haitian or to a Bahamian, to any African. I wouldn't say that to Black people, that they don't have a culture. The fact that they trade and craft is a culture. Your work can be a culture. How you do your work in a way that has an essentialness to it, and that flourishes can be added onto it. It's like, if you can make a vase, but you do things to the vase that have a practical meaning, let's say, and then that practical thing is just elaboratized. I don't know, like making a hook on a vase and then making that hook fancy. That's culture. And then all of a sudden, it might not have a hook, but there's ways that things progress over time. Call and response. Hey, that is genuinely Black. People try to fake the call and response, but the call and response is a Black thing. Yeah, he's out of pocket. He's out of pocket. He's what, what I'm saying? He's out of pocket, man. I can't go to wherever his land is and say that, nor that I want to at all, because I will be spending too much time soaking up the culture and learning something new, and trying to, trying to not be bored and just trying to, walk free and stuff. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say. He's out of pocket, man. Yes, he's doing too much, man. He's doing too much.
Let me try one more time at this. Let me see if I can get it on YouTube, but it's probably not the whole thing that we would have seen. before, but I'll try it. See. Here we go.
In this country are the only groups. They have no culture. It depends on who you meet, where you meet them.
But currently, there's not an African American culture.
No.
Yes, there is.
What is it?
Uh,
Name 2 value systems in the African American culture.
Value system?
Yes. Name 2 taboos in the African American culture system. Name 2 traditions, by the way, in the African American culture system. There is no value for freedom if you don't understand what it is. The concept of free. You have to have a foundation on which it would balance when you ask for it. Civil right, they give it to you. You have no culture. Nancy, you've been here, born here. Why would you be surprised if I say African Americans don't have a culture? What, twerking? So anything
but I feel like African American culture has definitely
you say
mainstream.
No, you say the word, the African American culture. What is it? Okay,
fine. Like hip hop, not hip hop. I mean, I don't want to.
Look,
yes, I feel like
you haven't thought about it. It's fine. Don't make things up.
I'm not making it up.
Okay,
I feel like
then educate me. You feel, you should know. You were born and raised here.
Yes, but I have a.
Are you African American?
I'm Haitian American.
That's correct. Do you see why you were being specific with that? Because anybody who encounters you already knows you before. If they know you are Haitian, at least 2 things comes to their mind.
What is that?
If they've been to Haiti, they can look at work ethics and they say, yes, Haitians, I know them. Service industry, they know where they do well. Food, they can say yes. And even language, Creole.
Right.
And they can say, oh, I love Haitians. Mm-hmm. Because they saw the culture in abstract before they encountered you. Mm-hmm. So people go over the bridge of your culture, your tradition, your customs, and that helps them to know how to
address it.
Exactly. To saying to you, any people who ask for these things, which are abstract, freedom, for example, mm-hmm. independence, for example, mm-hmm. and civil right, for example, voting right, for example, you must have a foundation on which these things are going to balance. Because the people there have to uniformly agree with consensus. This is our way of life. The do's and the don'ts involved in our culture. Even if you have to create an artificial culture.
Is that why the civil rights movement is considered dead?
It's dead and useless. They got it, but they could not balance it on any foundation.
Yeah, again,
African Americans in this country are the only groups.
I think that kind of solidified my thinking that he sounds dumb. He sounds crazy because he's not explaining what I think he's trying to get at. So, like, someone said in the chat, food and language, but the Southerner doesn't say the same things as the Northerner. Doesn't eat all the same foods. Like, if he was trying to say there is not a, and even then I don't know if he'll be correct, but if he was trying to say there's not a cohesive thing, I could more understand that. But again, even that might not be correct. I think he's trying to say something without even knowing how to say it. That's all I could say. But I could be wrong. You guys tell me. Who did I talk to? I talked to Real Black Gentleman. Let me talk to Black Steel next. Black Steel would say.
Whoo boy. Coco, you owe me for this. Listen to this dude twice in a row. I'm dying on the inside. All right. So culture from the Wikipedia, right? Culture is a concept that encompasses the social behavior, institutions, and norms found in human societies, as well as the knowledge, beliefs, arts, laws, customs, capabilities, attitudes, and habits of the individuals within these groups. Okay, so I'm Black American. My great-great-grandfather was a slave in South Carolina, right? Like, I'm going way back. So there are many aspects to Black American culture, right? And again, it's also regionalisms as well. A Black person in New York or from or in the Northeast might not have the same ideas of culture. Now, one thing within our African American culture that has been taught is respect to elders, right? You respect your elders. That is something that is taught from a young age. You respect your elders, respect your mother, respect your father, so on and so forth, right? That is something that has really been brought into our culture. Another thing is the church, right? So many African, good or bad, if you go to church, there's certain songs that we sing in church. Even now, I can remember hearing my grandmother sing, "He's a battle axe," and I know what to say. If he's a battle axe in the time of a battle, if you know, we know, because that's our culture, right? The call and response, real black gentleman mentioned before, right? Certain songs, cultural norms that we have within black people. Certain foods that we eat on New Year's Day. You have black eyed peas and collard greens. That's something that we have. And why? And that goes back to taboos about we have. You don't wash your clothes on New Year's Day because you're gonna wash your blessings out. That's a cultural taboo. All right. That means we have culture. He's talking about civil rights and everything else like that. Civil rights movement is not a cultural thing. That was a movement for black people to have access to the rights that we were entitled to as American citizens. So I don't know who this dude is, but to say black people, black Americans don't have culture is ahistorical. Literally, the musical foundation of the United States is based off of black people, right? Going all the way back to jazz, to blues, to ragtime. Okay, you could even say, every musical creation, rock and roll, was created off of black people. Poetry, you have Langston Hughes poetry, you have plays by Lorraine Hansberry and all the other people who contribute to the artistic legacy of African Americans. And to say we don't have culture, it just says more about you than about African Americans. But we have plenty of culture, right? I'm older, one thing about young people, right? If you get to a certain age, right, they recognize you as an uncle or auntie, right? Some of my students, they call me Unc, and that's a part of our culture because throughout African American history, right, we were oftentimes sold away from our loved ones, right? Sometimes you could be sold away, and we would create new families. We called it fictitious kin, but it was a way for us to recreate those social bonds that we may have lost through our enslavement. That's a cultural adaptation to oppression. So again, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm kind of mad he's being platformed, but I kind of understand it though, right? You put a black face out there and you have this black face saying the same stuff the white people say as a way to kind of digest it a little bit better. So it's sad, but it's not unexpected. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I saw RBG in the chat say, "Not snitching on your peoples and them." That's really an Italian gangster thing, though. That was an Italian thing. There was a time when black folks really was on that Italian tip, and they would name it like rappers. At one time, was calling themselves Luciano and all kind of shit like that. So, just point that out. Um, with that said, let me hear from Brother Anthony on this one. Anthony would say.
Yeah. Okay. All right now. Yeah, that's B. I heard. I'm gonna take a different position than everybody, man. Well, I don't know if it's different, but just another side of the coin. I'm gonna look at it this way. All right. Let me try. I've been trying to get this lined up right, man, because I was listening to everybody else, and I don't want to repeat the same thing. But okay. All right. Now this brother, and he is our brother. He's our brother. Okay. This brother, his knowledge of African people in this country probably come through the media. We got to look at that for a minute. You know, his knowledge doesn't come from being among African people in this country, being on the ground, being in the southern United States, where the real culture of African American people comes from. You know, like the sister was saying, hip hop and the musical genres and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, that's part of some things that came out of our culture. But you know, hip hop is not our culture. Hip hop is not culture to me. Not culture to me. You know, I mean, I would put it more like a subculture or a genre of culture or something. But like I said, this brother, his knowledge of African culture in this country probably comes through the media. You know, looking at television, you know what I'm saying? Because what all the things he was talking about, how they don't respect this and that and that. You know, that sounds like the kind of conversation that, you know, you might hear some brothers and sisters from the continent or from the other parts of the diaspora outside of America say about black people in America. And it goes both ways. You know, we say shit about our people too on the other side. But I'm saying, you know, all these words like they don't work hard, or or they lazy, or whatever. All of the things that you might hear some of these colonized Negro minds say on both sides. Like I say, so their knowledge comes from television, from the media, just like our knowledge about our people on the continent and about in the Caribbean and places come from the same thing. It's from the media. Oh man, I heard them Haitians crazy. You know, them Jamaicans crazy. You know, whatever. Them Nigerians, them Liberians, they crazy. You know, we get all that misinformation from the media instead of learning from each other. Okay, that being said, Coco, I seen this brother who was talking about, he was the same kind of brother, but he was from the Caribbean. And I can't remember whether he was from Jamaica or Haiti. And it made me think about something you said. And he was saying the same kind of stuff about Bahamians that y'all didn't have no culture. As a matter of fact, not only that, you know what he said? He said that y'all not even real Caribbeans. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you know what, man? But technically, you know, they ain't in the Caribbean. So I mean, this kind of madness, this kind of misinformation, this miseducation among us, among our people, it goes both ways. You know, I mean, from all of us. Now, if he was to really learn about what black culture, what African culture is in America, you know, he would have to come to the southern United States to see the culture. And then, like you said, black people in New York or in the Midwest or California. Well, remember, those black people came from the southern United States. They came from there. And they carry things like they food. You can go to Harlem and still get soul food. You know what I'm saying? You can go to a church in Harlem and still see people getting in the spirit when the music playing. You know what I'm saying? And seeing people shouting. You know what I'm saying? You can still see that. All of that's part of our African culture that came from the South. And that culture that came from the South came from Africa. Now see, this brother, I think in his mind, he's saying, okay, now you left Africa as Yoruba, as Fawn, as Akan, and as these different ethnic groups. You went over here, you lost your language, or they took your language, they took your custom, they took your drum, they took your music, and he look at it now, you don't have none of that. And I think when he see us now, and not with that, what we had when we was in Africa, he's saying that's why he's saying we don't have culture. Because we don't have our Yoruba culture. We don't have our Akan culture. We don't have our Bakongo culture. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what he's saying in its purest form. And he look at it and say, well, where's the culture? Where's your taboos? Where's all of the stuff like this here? But like I said, it comes from a lack of knowledge. No, he not knowing what the culture is. Because like Black Steel talked about, the culture encompasses a lot of things. You know, it's not just one thing, it's several things. And you can't separate the spirituality part from the culture. And like one of the biggest things is like, I grew up, I don't know if Black Steel did, he probably heard of it. I know Bakari probably heard of being from Mississippi and me being from Louisiana. But I know when I was a young guy, we used to pass by houses and see and pass by yards and see these trees with these blue bottles on them. And I wonder, what are those blue bottles? You know, so my grandfather, grandparents, and other older people told me what that is. You know what I'm saying? And that was a way of capturing evil spirits. And this was something that went back to West Africa and Central Africa. You know what I'm saying? Now, see, he don't know that. He don't know that. I think I heard Sister Cheryl saying something about the broom. You know, and I heard somebody talking about the black eyed peas, about the, and the collard greens. Well, that's something that we as African people in America do, but that goes back to the Yoruba people of West Africa who they called them cow peas, black eyed peas. And they ate them for good fortune. We eat them for good luck on New Year's. No, we have a tradition where we sweep out the house and we sweep everything to the front and out the front door, like sweeping out the bad shit. No, all of these are things that go back to the Congo, into West Africa. But see, he don't know that because he hasn't taken the time to study that. Or he's talking to a young lady right there. I think she's a Haitian sister. She probably is not in depth about the culture, or know as much, so it's easy for him to like catch her like a deer in the head, like, and she like wanted, well, damn, what do I say now? Hip hop, you know what I'm saying? But it comes from a lack of information, a lack of education, a lack of information. It's the same thing, like, remember that prom we had where they had the brother here, the African American brother, the preacher, saying, Africans, y'all got to do better. Y'all ain't built shit. Y'all ain't built nothing over Story Tall. You know what I'm saying? And the sister talking about y'all worshiping trees and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? A lack of information. Now, what if he'd have heard that shit? You know what I'm saying? Them telling him that you Africans ain't got no culture, that you ain't never built nothing. Well, I'm saying because it's that media thing. We don't take time to learn from each other. You know what I'm saying? To learn what the culture is. You got to learn. You can't just walk up and just see the people like Sister Cheryl said, you just dropped off in the middle of Mali somewhere and seen some poor people, whatever, then form an opinion off of that and not knowing the history, not putting things in context. But that's why I said I wouldn't go jump on the brother because I'm going to let him, I got to put it in context. I would sit back and observe and listen to what he say and see where it's coming from. And I seen where it's coming from immediately. It's because he don't know. No, he don't know the culture. You know what? Half of us don't know our own culture. You know what I'm saying? Us on this panel, we know things. But I mean, a lot of us don't know our culture. Some of the stuff I say or Black Steelers say, we talking about the church songs, you know what I'm saying? Probably they ain't never heard of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? You remember Koku, we did the ring shot videos and stuff. A lot of our people forgot about that kind of, our young people, because things, it's been such a long time since we been really into our culture like that. With this with media and all this new wave being flooded with all this new wave bullshit. No, that's really that helps destroy culture. But yeah, man, it's just because he don't know. And I ain't saying nobody give him a pass, but I mean I had to look at it and say, no, I'm not gonna get to the emotional part for me. I ain't talking about nobody else. But I'm just saying, and I have to understand that this brother looking at things through a colonized mind. You know what I'm saying? Just the same way as we do it. Now, if it had been a white man saying that, we'd have been saying, you know what? We'd have had, well, you don't know nobody. You don't know what he's talking about. He ain't never studied nothing. He don't know nothing. Well, that brother haven't either. And the fact is, most African brothers and sisters who come here, they didn't come over here to study African people's culture over here. They came to get a job, to make a living, to provide for their families, whatever. You know what I'm saying? And, they got fed media bullshit about us, and we got the same thing about them. But we didn't ever just sit down to learn and talk to each other. Now, you got some of us do. Like there was a brother, what's his name? He wrote a book. I got a book called Black Nationalism. Brother from Nigeria. His name escaping me now. Black Steel might know him. But he was a friend with Dr. Clark. But he's from Nigeria, and he wrote a book called Black Nationalism, where he was studying about the Nation of Islam and movements, in America. No, he actually wrote a whole book about us. And so what I'm saying is the study, the knowledge has to be passed on. The studying has to be done. The education has to be passed on. We could get rid of that kind of mindset. We could get that kind of mindset out of our people from their side and from our side. And I'll leave it right there, man.
I really appreciate that, Anthony. And I think between you and what the matron is saying, which I have up on the screen. By the way, shout out to the matron. Make sure you guys are checking out her weekly readings, man. Don't leave her hanging. without checking out those weekly readings. But the matron says he is looking at other people groups and comparing what he sees to African people. This is a non-starter as we have a unique experience unlike other people groups. We have diverse cultures. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Again, W.E. Du Bois doesn't write about the Philadelphia black man, or Negro as he would call them in his day, unless there was something different about them. And that's regardless to whether their people migrated from the South. There was something different. Like Chicago. Chicago has all these problems. I was just talking to Brother Bakari about that during the week. All these problems. Most of the people from Chicago are from the South somewhere. But there's something different going on. And therefore, there isn't a culture, but there's a diverse culture. I don't think, if he had said that, I wouldn't have had a problem with what he was talking about. Acknowledge that there's a diversity of culture. The West Coast, remember those old videos we watched where those black folks in California didn't want the Southern black folks to come? Remember what they said? It's a different culture. You see what I'm saying? It's a different culture. They didn't want the Southern black, and those people were probably from the South themselves originally. You know, and I think the point I'm trying to make ultimately is like, we gotta speak with nuance, man. You know, Anthony mentions whoever it was who was trying to diss or knock the Bahamas, but the Bahamas is 700 islands and keys. We have an underlying unifying culture, but you know what? There is some little differences between someone from Nassau, like me, the capital, versus someone from Exuma. There is slight differences. So you would have to say in that context, there's somewhat of a diversity or diverse culture going on there because we're separated by islands, right? But that's the real point. I mean, that's not the point of the post, I'm sure, or who posted it. But the thing I would like us to start doing is really speaking with proper nuance when we talk about each other. We tend to talk in these blanketed statements, and that doesn't help us. Sister Cheryl, did I hear from you?
No. So he said a couple of things that I thought were interesting. And I wasn't really paying attention to it, but he said something about civil rights. Civil rights was the foundation. I'm paraphrasing, but civil rights was the foundation of Black Americans. And then once we got away from that, that's when the culture, that's when we started not having a culture. And then he said that, well, you mentioned the thing about Black people in Philly are very different. And I think I know what he's driving at. I could be wrong, but I kind of get the same thing. Like when I talk to people like in the South, it's like when they hear me talk or when they hear the type of things I talk about, they kind of get a little like uneasy. And I'm not saying all people in Philly are like this, but people in Philly are very direct. They're very straightforward. They're not about civil rights. They're not really about like, oh, let me go hold this white person's hand. They're not really about like cheesing in front of white people. Like you are always going to have those group of people that's like that. But if you talk to a regular dude on the street in West Philly, he's not going to be like, oh yeah, civil rights. We are all human and we all gotta be together. They're not really like that. They're not hard on it like that. So maybe I think this guy is a stark integrationist, and I think I'm willing to bet it's either one of the two. He either got a white wife or a non-Black wife, or he hang around a lot of white people. And also, I think, I think somebody did say this in the chat, but I think this interview is staged, definitely, because even the Haitian sister, she looking like she want to say a lot of stuff, like to him. When he's saying like, oh, Black Americans don't have no culture, and she just sitting like they're kind of like mainstream. Like, what do you mean? And that indicates to me that this guy, like most people his age, they're not really into social media like that. So that's why I say it could be staged, but then again, I know a lot of people his age that's from his background that sound like that. So yeah, but yeah, more to the thing about Philly, I just see that correlation between, because like when you talk about civil rights down here in the South, people are like, yeah, civil rights, that's what Martin Luther King fought for. Da 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 da. When you go up north, it's you see some of it, you see some of that, but not really. Not really. So I think maybe that's what he's getting at, and and I think people in Philly make him feel a little uneasy. And I'll end it there.
I appreciate that, Cheryl. Afro Native World, shout out to him in the chat. He says, is he alluding to there isn't a national African, quote unquote, American culture? And that's what I'm getting at. I think that's what he's trying to say, but he's going about it a real awful way. With that said, man, Jose has been waiting for a while here. Jose, how are you this week?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear you. What's going on?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I was listening. I just got out of bed, and I was smoking a spliff, so I missed a part. But I wanna share some thoughts about the not having a culture. So I'm into this FBA. Yeah, I don't even want to call it discussion, but yeah, so sometimes I partake in trolling FBA, and so this subject is sometimes this is sometimes the subject, and I've thought a lot of it. If you look at hip hop alone, I have difficulties calling that a culture. Funk alone, I have difficulties calling that a culture. Why? Because it's not passed on to the next generation. Blues, where are the black blues bands and talents? You don't see black kids playing instruments anymore. You don't see black kids dominating breakdance. You don't see well, in the Netherlands, you don't see black kids dominating. Well, yeah, there's a lot of in the Dutch hip hop scene. There's a lot of black youngsters, but do you understand what I'm saying? So that's when you zoom in. But if you zoom out, you definitely do see a culture, a distinct culture, a distinct Black American culture. In like in the Caribbean, you have a few. You have the flavors that fall the reggae family. So you have raga and you have whatever toasting, and that's clearly a distinct culture, right? Then you have the salsa from Cuba and the Spanish-ish branch. So and that's also a distinct culture. So what I'm trying to say is hip hop. I may have discovered hip hop in the Netherlands before African Americans from another city than New York discovered hip hop. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if you look at umbrella wise, if you look, you know, the umbrella is definitely an African American culture, and I wanna call all these names: hip hop, blues, jazz, hip hop, blues, disco, rock and roll. Maybe all of them are children of jazz. That's, yeah. But anyway, if you zoom out and look at it umbrella wise, yeah, definitely there's a culture. But it's in it's I thought the previous speaker had a point with the civil rights movement. So integration with integration put the culture in other people's hands. So that's why now with anything that you come up with, the industry takes it as a trend and uses it to sell yet another lifestyle. So it's not really in your hands. But umbrella wise, if you look at it zoomed out, yes, there's definitely an African American culture, but I'm afraid you don't have the power over it anymore. Thanks.
That's good stuff, Jose. By the way, before you guys respond, Afro Native World has this question. He says, I didn't think regionalism was as bad here as other countries where cultures, even black ones, are divided by region. What say the African American folk on the panel? African Americans together, regardless of region. So that's one question. But I like y'all to, if you have a response for Jose, I think Anthony may have some pushback to something maybe I or someone else said. So Anthony, you go ahead, but also touch on what Jose said and what Afro Native World said in the chat.
Okay, yeah. You know, I think Jose was spot on, man. You know, I like what he said. You know, I pretty much basically agree with it. Okay, and my thing was it's okay. I said pushback. It's small pushback, not a hard pushback. It was to you, Koku. And what I was saying when you was talking about how the culture in different cities outside of the South, areas outside of the South, like in New York or Chicago or LA. Okay, what I would say is this right here. No, those Africans who went to New York, they have the same culture that we do. In Chicago and LA, they all have the same culture. We speak the same African American vernacular. We worship the same way. We eat the same food. Now, they may do it with a New York accent, or they may do it with a Midwest accent, with Chicago, or with a California accent. And like you was talking about the black people in Cali who didn't want those black Southern, those people from the South coming there. I don't think that was a cultural thing to me. I think that was an economic thing. Because remember, at that particular time when Africans were going to California in the 40s, 30s and 40s, this was when they had that the shipbuilding, the Navy industry, the military industry going on out there. And a lot of black people was getting jobs in those Navy yards. That's how a lot of black people came up. A lot of brothers had jobs in those Navy yards, in other related jobs. And what happened was those people had established themselves and they didn't want competition. You know what I'm saying? These Negroes coming from down there, it's only a few of us getting these jobs. Now we got to contend with these people coming up here. You know what I'm saying? I think it was more of an economic thing than anything, not a cultural thing, because those people ate the same damn food. They went to the same church. They worshiped the same way. They were the same people. Yeah, they was out there and they probably had throw a little twist to it, but it was the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I think it is like a uniform. It is an African American culture, but it's just like what Dr. Sheikh Andy Job said when he was talking about the cultural continuity in Africa. Yeah, you got Yoruba, you got Akan, you got Zulu, you got Bakongo, you got Xhosa, you got all different kinds of groups of people in Africa, and with different spiritual belief system and cultural belief system. But it's always a cultural continuity in it. They still related though, and you see a similarity in all of them, even though they might speak it with a Zulu accent or with a Xhosa accent or with a Yoruba or a Akan or a Bambara or Wollo, different accents. But you know what I'm saying? But it's still a similarity, that strong similarity that you can tell that they come from the same tree. And I think it's just like Africans in this country and like all over the diaspora. Whether you in Haiti or Jamaica or the Bahamas, you know what I'm saying? They all got a little something that's similar. You know what I'm saying? They got Obi in Jamaica. I think they had Obi in Bahamas and in other parts of the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? They got voodoo in Haiti and they got voodoo in other parts of the Caribbean. You know what I'm saying? We got different practices and way of doing things, but they all similar because they come from the same tree. So yeah, we have different accents. We might do it with a New York thing or with a Chicago thing, you know what I'm saying, or with an LA thing. But it's still, I think it's still, to me, it's the African American culture, just like it's the culture in Bahamas. You know, they may be different in Nassau than they is from the Exuma, where you was talking about, or any other part of the Bahamas. You know, I'll leave it at that. That's all I wanted to say. It wasn't a hard pushback, just a little bit.
Yeah, my slight pushback to your pushback is the people in the video actually said it was culture. It could have been both, because you're adding a whole other dimension historically that's not captured in that video. But in the video itself, they said it was a different culture.
I think they was wrong though.
Okay, sure. Any other last thoughts on this prompt? All right. Well, before we exit, I want to thank Jose for joining us tonight too, by the way. But I will like to get shout outs from folks of anything positive in your black world, your neck of the woods, anything you saw in the news. Let's give some shout outs, some positive shout outs before we leave. Let me just go down the line. Black Steel, what would you like to shout out this week?
Let's see. What can I shout out? Not really too much a shout out this week, you know. Hope everyone had a good week. I want to shout out the panel for doing a tremendous job. Very good topics tonight. So I'll shout that out. Thanks.
Appreciate you. Shout out to you for the speedy recovery, and you rejoined us this week. So I appreciate that. As always, I appreciate you, Black Steel. Real Black Gentleman, what would you like to shout out this week?
I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm trying to think, you know what I'm saying? Just I ain't trying to shout anyone out necessarily. I'm happy, you know what I'm saying, that I think people are I think slowly, I think people are, you know, black people are, we're I think we're getting over a lot of this stuff. I think the just the younger generation, I think the generational gap is closing in a way. Even though you might have these outliers, I think that slowly but surely, a lot of these messages that we're trying, that are, you know what I'm saying, that, you know what I'm saying, our ancestors, our scholars have been trying to tell us, slowly but surely. You know what I mean? It's uneven progress. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I think it's like, you know, 4 steps, you know what I'm saying, forward, 2 steps back. All right, 3 steps forward. All right, 2 steps back. All right. You know what I'm saying? It seems like there's a lot of, but you know what I'm saying, overall, a lot of it is just, you know, sense of perception. You can only tend to pay attention to a couple things at a time, and then everything else gets lost. And you know what I'm saying, you can't see a setback, a temporary, like, you know, detriment as, like, you know what I'm saying, precursor to everything else. You gotta always keep your focus on the big prize. So I was going to give a shout out for black people trying to keep your eye on the big prize.
Appreciate that, RBG. By the way, chat, this is your time to post your shout outs for something positive. I'll read them on the air before we leave. With that said, let me hear from Sister Cheryl. Cheryl, what's your shout out for the week?
I really don't know. I guess shout out to all of the Black people who think they're, I don't know, Native American, indigenous. You know, shout out to them. They, you know, they just confused. You know, it's just, if Africa start winning tomorrow and everything, you know, America fell and everything in Africa was great, they be talking about how they African now. So, you know, shout out to them. Shout out to their confusion. They'll come back one day.
But do we want them back, though, is the question. If you go over there, you got to stay over there. That's my thoughts on it.
You can't save everybody. Can't save everybody. So
appreciate that, Sister Cheryl. Shout out to your husband too, by the way. Shout out. Jose, what would you like to shout out this week?
Shout out to the Trump administration and the European Commission for destroying their image and themselves. What I've been guessing for a long time is that they have no choice than to fight. As with bloodshed did they come to power, and with bloodshed will they defend their position. So I just hope it takes some time before they get there, time enough for our people to get out and watch the show from afar, how they destroy each other in yet another quote unquote world war. So yeah, shout out to these apes.
Oh, appreciate that, Jose. I didn't know you were done there. In the chat, Trigger Happy says, yes, he thinks captured another spy. So shout outs to that. War Drum says, shout out to the panel and Bitter Mad podcast. Shout out to the ancestors. Afro Native World says, shout out to the Dodos. I'm not sure what that would be. But shout out to them. He also says for the complimentary couples interview. Okay. The Dodos. Cheryl says that's me. I need Cheryl to explain that to me because I'm a little bit lost there.
Yeah, that was we did a complimentary couples interview on abibi2me.com.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Drop me. You're on the Discord, right? Drop me a link and I'll check it out. Okay. I appreciate that. So Afro Native World, I hope you knew that was Sister Cheryl and her husband when you said that. I'm guessing you did. So appreciate that. Last but not least, Brother Anthony, what would you like to shout out this week?
Okay, man. Yeah, I just want to shout out everybody on the panel, man, and in the chat, man. Peace to everybody, and shout out to Buana, man. We miss you, Buana.
Yeah, shout out to Buana. I didn't hear from him. I hope all is well on his side. I'll have to remember to reach out to him. My shout outs to Brother Bakari, actually. Last Sunday, Brother Bakari reminded me, I'll try to be brief, but he reminded me that, you gotta work on your mind. You have to work on the toughness of your spirit and mind. And he reminded me that I had begun researching the 1 meal a day diet. And I kind of fell off of it. I think that's when my father got sick. And I fell off of it for some months. And I went back this week and I finished doing my research and put together a meal plan. So shout out to him for that. Also, Bakari said something to me in that conversation that I want to share with you guys. The time for arguing ideas and ideologies, we gotta move past that now. We gotta start preparing ourselves. We gotta become preppers now. Like how white folks talk about being preppers, we gotta be preppers now. We gotta talk about how to prepare for anything that could threaten our existence. And that's something I'd like to do a little bit more in the future here. I'll talk about it more in the future. But that idea of preparing your minds, preparing your bodies, preparing yourself in a tangible way. Make sure you have those tools of warfare and the mindset of warfare. We got to start doing that more. And I really appreciated him sharing that with me last week. There's something else he shared with me this week, and I can't think of it right now. But that I am thankful for. And he, in the chat, he says, shout out to the panel. Shout out to Coco for hosting every Saturday. Shout out to the chat. So I shout out to all of you who come here every week and have these discussions. I hope that You'll bring more people along in the coming weeks, coming years. But yeah, it's time for us to become preppers and really prepare ourselves for what's next. And so for that, I shout you all out, and I hope that you guys will join in that endeavor. But Bakari will be doing a live tomorrow. Make sure you check him out. He's talking about bug out bags and other things you need. Like Bakari said to me earlier this week, most people don't even know what should go in a bug out bag. That's important now. We got to talk about those things. We'll be back next week. It'll either be me or Jackadero. By the way, shout out to Jackadero. It'll be me or Jackadero. But in the meantime, man, thank you all for being who y'all are as African people. And I'll talk to you guys in the near future. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.